news alert because starting now, the U.S. military will begin enforcing a full-scale blockade of all maritime traffic into and out of Iran as Navy minesweepers clear a path to open the Strait of Hormuz.
Talks between the United States and Iran scheduled to begin
as
on
Iran
Saturday.
refuses to give up on this nuclear program. The U.S. declaring a naval blockade against Iran after both sides walked away from the talks late on Saturday. The Strait of Hormuz is a key flashpoint as the president
suggestion.
ramps up
Number
the
one,
pressure
buy oil
continuously.
from the United States of America. We have plenty. We have so much. And number two, build up some delayed courage. Should have done it before. Should have done it with us, as we asked.
Your gas costs $4, $13 a gallon today. Before this war started 45 days ago, it was $2.99. If the talks happening Thursday in Islamabad collapse, analysts say you could be paying $6 a gallon by summer. Your grocery bill is already up. Your heating costs are already up. And somewhere in a hotel in Pakistan on Thursday, diplomats from two countries that have been at war for 45 days will sit across a table and decide whether that number goes higher. But here is what almost nobody is telling you about this Thursday meeting, because the story is more complicated and more important than most coverage is making it. 48 hours ago, the first round of talks collapsed after 21 hours. Trump launched a naval blockade. Iran's commander said the blockade would fail. Iran's parliament speaker posted a map of White House area gas prices and wrote, "Enjoy the current price of gasoline." And today, both sides are going back. Something changed in 48 hours. And what changed, and whether it is enough, is the difference between a diplomatic breakthrough and a resumption of bombing that could send oil to $120 a barrel, push U.S. gas past $6, trigger a global recession, and put American men one step closer to a draft registration that was just announced last week. This is what is actually happening. Verified. All of it. When Vance boarded Air Force Two on Sunday morning and gave reporters those 11 words, "They have chosen not to accept our terms," most analysts assumed the ceasefire was functionally over. They were wrong. Here is precisely what happened next. Trump said Monday that Iran had called the administration that morning and that they'd like to make a deal very badly. He didn't specify who placed the call or who received it, but the fact that he said it publicly was itself a signal. CNN one day earlier, Trump said he didn't care whether Iran came back to the table. Then Iran called. The sequence matters. The U.S. naval blockade took effect at 10 a.m. Monday. Within hours, oil crossed $104. Iranian ports, already under pressure from 45 days of war, now face complete maritime isolation. Iran's oil exports were $45 billion per year, 13% of GDP. That revenue stream is now being cut off. CNN Iran's leadership felt that pressure within one trading session. Pakistani, Egyptian, and Turkish mediators immediately continued talks with both the U.S. and Iran in an effort to bridge remaining gaps. A regional source told Axios, "We are not in complete deadlock. The door is not closed yet. Both sides are bargaining. It's a bazaar." Axios in Islamabad, the Americans proposed Iran accept a 20-year pause in enriching uranium. Iran responded with a 5-year suspension. The U.S. rejected that, but both sides have now proposed a suspension, not permanent dismantlement. That is a narrower gap than it appeared on Saturday night. CNN, the Associated Press, citing 4 informed sources, confirmed that the U.S. and Iran have agreed to hold a second round of talks. The exact time and location had not been confirmed, but Islamabad on Thursday is the working plan according to 2 U.S. officials and a diplomat from one of the mediating countries. Arab News PK 4 things. 48 hours. Both sides back at the table. Before we go any further, let's talk about what most coverage skips. What this actually means for the person watching this in the United States or Canada right now. Because this is not just a Middle East story. It is your story. And the Thursday talks are your talks. Your regular gasoline in the U.S. averages $4. 13 per gallon today. Up $1. 14 per gallon since the war began 45 days ago, according to AAA. Axios, that is 38% higher than before February 28. A family driving 15,000 miles per year on a 30 mpg car is spending approximately $680 more per year just in fuel, and the war has been going for only 45 days. Karen Young, senior scholar at Columbia University's Center on Global Energy Policy, said, "I think for now and into the end of 2026, we're looking at elevated oil prices for certain." She added prices will not decline until the strait is reopened and damaged oil facilities are repaired, calling both huge variables which are really unsolved. CNN: if Thursday fails and the ceasefire collapses on April 21, analysts project oil above $120 per barrel and U.S. gasoline at $5.50 to $6 per gallon. That is not a worst case. That is the base case if bombing resumes. Oil is not just fuel. Everything you buy at the grocery store, packaging, fertilizer, transport, refrigeration, runs on oil. The IEA said the war has upended its outlook for global oil demand and now expects the steepest quarterly decline in demand since the COVID-19 pandemic, forecasting a fall of 1.5 million barrels per day in the April-June period. CNN: when supply falls and demand simultaneously contracts, prices for everyday goods become unpredictable. American men are set to be automatically registered for the draft, according to Time magazine reporting this week. Time: this was not widely covered. A war that started 45 days ago as an air campaign has already produced a policy change that has not happened in decades. If the Thursday talks fail, the bombing resumes, Iran rebuilds its military capability, China supplies new air defenses, and the war expands, that registration becomes something more than a formality. Thursday is not an abstract diplomatic event happening far away. Thursday is the number at the pump. Thursday is your grocery bill. Thursday is whether a letter arrives at your son's house. Now let's be precise about what Iran actually shifted, because the media coverage has been imprecise on this point. Iran did not cave. Iran did not accept U.S. terms. What Iran did was something more subtle and more significant for Thursday's prospects. Vance told Fox News that Iranian negotiators moved in our direction, but they didn't move far enough. He said Iranian negotiators had to return to Tehran from Islamabad to get approval for any deal, suggesting the delegation in Islamabad did not have full authority to close. CNN: this is critical. If the Iranian team in Islamabad genuinely lacked closing authority, then Saturday's collapse was not necessarily a final rejection. It was a first round where Iran tested the room, reported back to Tehran, and is now returning with potentially broader authority. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said, "The Iranians' desperation for a deal will only increase with President Trump's highly effective naval blockade now in effect." Arab News PK: Iran's President Pezeshkian said his country has not stopped the negotiation process. Iran's Foreign Minister Arakchi, who described the talks as the most intensive engagement in 47 years, said discussions got to within inches of a memorandum of understanding before the U.S. imposed the blockade. His framing is that the U.S. moved the goalpost at the last moment. The Council on Foreign Relations noted that Iran is using the ceasefire to regroup. A sizable portion of Iran's missile forces survived the bombing, and Iran is now digging out weapons stored at underground sites blocked under rubble. Iran is also getting help from China to rebuild air defenses. Council on Foreign Relations: Iran is not returning to Thursday's talks from a position of desperation alone. It is returning from a position of calculation. The blockade hurts, but so does a resumed bombing campaign. And Iran knows that the longer the ceasefire holds, the stronger its military position becomes. Every analyst watching Thursday's talks is focused on one specific number. Not the oil price, not the blockade. The number is 15. That is the gap in years between the U.S. and Iran on the nuclear pause question. The Americans proposed Iran accept a 20-year pause in enriching uranium. Iran responded with a 5-year suspension. The U.S. rejected it. CNN now: here is what makes this interesting. Both sides have moved from their original positions. The U.S. originally demanded Iran end enrichment permanently and dismantle all facilities. A 20-year pause is a retreat from permanent dismantlement. Iran originally said enrichment is a sovereign right that cannot be negotiated at all. A 5-year offer is a retreat from that absolute position. Both sides retreated. The question Thursday is whether the gap between 5 and 20 can be bridged, and what Iran receives in exchange for moving toward a longer pause. One proposal previously floated, but whose status is unclear. The U.S. would provide Iran with nuclear fuel for a decade in exchange for Tehran halting all enrichment. This removes Iran's stated civilian justification for enrichment. If the U.S. supplies the fuel, Iran has no need to enrich. CNN: a U.S. official told Axios a deal could be reached if Iran shows more flexibility and recognizes that the Islamabad proposal is the best it will get. Axios, the second core issue, Hormuz control, is harder. Trump floated the idea of joint U.S.-Iranian administration of the strait. Tehran rejected it, saying the strait is in the territorial waters of Iran and Oman, and those two countries should manage it. Whether a creative formula on Hormuz management can be constructed by Thursday is the second key question. These are the two locks. Thursday needs two keys. This is the segment most coverage skips. What actually happens if Thursday fails? The ceasefire expires April 21. That is 7 days from today. Here is the precise sequence of events that analysts say becomes likely if no deal is reached by then. The White House confirmed Trump is considering limited military strikes on Iran in addition to the blockade if it doesn't change Iran's course. White House spokesperson Olivia Wales said Trump wisely keeps all additional options on the table. She added, "Anyone who thinks they know what President Trump will do next is purely speculating." The Pentagon has presented Trump with a range of military options, including resumption of full-scale bombing. Israel and Gulf Arab states have been urging him to finish the job. Council on Foreign Relations: when bombing resumes, Hormuz does not open. The blockade remains. Iran retaliates with whatever missile capability survived 45 days of strikes. The CFR noted a sizable portion of Iran's missile forces survived, and Iran is digging out weapons from underground sites. Council on Foreign Relations: oil crosses $120 per barrel within days of resumed fighting, according to energy market projections. U.S. gasoline hits $5, $50 to $6 per gallon. U.S. intelligence reporting suggests China is planning to provide new air defense weaponry to Iran in the coming weeks. NBC News: if bombing resumes, China accelerates that delivery. Iran's air defenses, already partially rebuilt, become significantly more capable. U.S. aircraft losses increase. The political cost of the war for Trump rises sharply ahead of the 2026 midterms. China, planning to supply Iran new air defense weapons, resumed. CFR analyst James Lindsay wrote that rising oil prices from a prolonged conflict could send the global economy into a tailspin. Council on Foreign Relations: the IEA has already projected the steepest oil demand decline since COVID for Q2 2026. A resumed war compounds that projection. Supply chains, already disrupted for 45 days, face another shock. Interest rates remain elevated globally as central banks fight energy-driven inflation. The U.S. economy, already absorbing a 38% oil price increase, faces a second surge. And for America specifically, Ali Vaez, Iran project director at the International Crisis Group, said, "The likelier scenario is not immediate war, but a volatile period of pressure, signaling, and last-minute attempts to prevent a wider conflagration." PBS: but volatile periods have a habit of becoming something worse, and the draft registration, announced this week, is not a coincidence, it is a preparation. Here is something neither side will say publicly, but every analyst sees clearly. Both the United States and Iran have powerful reasons to make Thursday work. Why the U.S. needs it: there is little appetite among many administration officials to see military attacks resume, many acknowledging Americans are also growing impatient with the war. The outcome of the talks is expected to carry implications for Vance's political future, including a potential presidential run in 2028. CNN: the 2026 midterm elections are months away. A president who resumed bombing after having a deal within inches at Islamabad and then sent U.S. gas to $6 and activated the draft would face an electorate that is not forgiving. Trump knows this. His team knows this, the CFR noted. Economic pressure takes time to hit home. The ceasefire, however, ends in just 8 days. Iran is using the ceasefire to regroup, but regrouping takes longer than 8 days. Iran's $45 billion oil export revenue is now blocked. Its port infrastructure is under blockade. Its air defenses are partially destroyed. Its supreme leader was killed on day 1 of the war. Council on Foreign Relations: Iran estimates its war damages at $270 billion. It wants reparations. It wants sanctions relief. It wants its frozen assets returned. None of those things happen if the war resumes. They only happen at a negotiating table. The same CFR analysis noted the broader point. The setback does not necessarily mean the war will resume, but it showed how entrenched the sides remain after an inconclusive 40-day war that inflicted heavy damage on Iran, reverberated across the region, and shook the global economy. PBS: the most revealing quote came from an Axios source close to the mediation: "We are not in complete deadlock. The door is not closed yet. Both sides are bargaining. It's a bazaar. Axios a bazaar. That word is everything. A bazaar is not a peace conference. It is not a surrender ceremony. It is a place where both sides are still in the room, still haggling, still believing a transaction is possible. The question Thursday is whether the haggling produces a number both sides can live with. Thursday does not need to solve everything. It needs to produce two things to prevent the April 21 collapse. If the nuclear and Hormuz gaps cannot be fully bridged by Thursday, the minimum outcome that prevents bombing from resuming is a ceasefire extension. Officials said a second meeting before the two-week ceasefire expires on April 21 could also potentially result in extending the ceasefire itself. Time and extension is not a deal, but it is not a bombing campaign either. For the 600 ships still trapped in the Gulf, for the families paying $4.13 a gallon, for the young men whose draft registration was just announced, an extension means more time for diplomacy to work. Iran's Foreign Minister Arakchi said they were inches from an MO at Islamabad. Pakistani authorities have begun referring to the negotiations as part of a broader Islamabad process, framing it as an ongoing diplomatic track rather than a single round of talks. Wikipedia, if Thursday produces a signed memorandum, even a partial one covering ceasefire extension, nuclear pause timeframe, and a Hormuz opening schedule, the world changes on Friday morning. Oil drops, gas falls, the draft registration becomes a footnote. 600 ships start moving. That is what is at stake Thursday. Here is the honest picture as of today, April 14, 2026. 48 hours ago, the most significant U.S.-Iran diplomatic engagement since 1979 collapsed at a hotel in Islamabad. Both sides went home. Trump announced a blockade. Oil crossed $104. Iran posted gas prices near the White House. Then Iran called Washington. Mediators worked through the night. The Atlantic confirmed Thursday. The AP confirmed Thursday with 4 sources. Wikipedia's Islamabad talks entry confirmed teams are returning this week. Something moved. Not enough to make a deal. Enough to come back. The nuclear gap is 15 years on paper, but it is not really about years. It is about trust. Iran does not trust that a deal with the U.S. will hold. They had one in 2015 and Trump scrapped it. The U.S. does not trust that Iran's nuclear program is civilian. They have watched it expand for decades. 15 years of distrust compressed into a negotiating room in Islamabad is the real gap Thursday must bridge. Oman's foreign minister, one of the key mediators, said it plainly. I urge that the ceasefire be extended and talks continue. Success may require everyone to make painful concessions, but this is nothing compared to the pain of failure and war. Al Jazeera, if you are watching this from the United States or Canada, the pain of failure is not abstract. It is $6 gas. It is $400 more per month in groceries. It is a draft letter. It is a recession. It is a war that nobody planned to still be fighting in 2027. The window is this week. The table is Thursday. And for the first time in 47 years, both sides are actually in the room. Whether that is enough, nobody knows yet. Sources: Associated Press, The Atlantic, CNN, Axios, Time Magazine, NPR, Al Jazeera, Council on Foreign Relations, International Crisis Group, Columbia University Center on Global Energy Policy, Arab News, IEA, AAA, Wikipedia, Islamabad Talks, Wikipedia 2026, Iran War Ceasefire, PBS NewsHour.